Hello, 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 hello. This is Marshall Goldsmith. I am so happy to be here on LinkedIn Live. We have a very special program today with a fantastic guest. I'm so grateful he's here. For those of you I don't know, I'll briefly introduce myself. I'm an executive educator. I got ranked #1 leadership thinker in the world a couple of times. I travel all around the world giving talks about leadership. I'm an executive coach. I'm the coach of the CEO of Ford and Pfizer and Glaxo and the World Bank, the Mayo Clinic, and so many wonderful people. And I love coaching because I learn from all these wonderful people. And two, I'm an author. I've written or edited 41 books, 3 big New York Times bestsellers, 6 overall bestsellers, and the others purchased by my mother, my father, and associated relatives. So those are the 3 things I do. And I really love right now, my avocation is a group called 100 Coaches. I made a LinkedIn video and said, my name is Marshall and I'm a coach and educator, and I'm going to give away all I know to 15 people. And the only price is when you get old, you do the same thing. If you're interested, let me know. I thought 100 people would apply, might adopt 15. 18,000 people have applied. I've adopted 250, and just amazing people. Some of the top thinkers in the world, great CEOs, athletes, news people. One of my 100 coaches has been in the news a lot lately, Chris Cuomo, CNN News here in America, just really an amazing guy. He has the virus, is on TV every night talking about his experiences. It's just been very moving, and it is just wonderful. I sent him an email last night and I said, maybe you're doing such a good job of coaching others. Maybe you want to be a coach when you grow up and quit being a news anchor. And he said, let me just make it through tonight. So wonderful, wonderful guy. So we've got a lot of great people. And today we have a special guest, Alex Osterwalder. Alex is one of the top ranked business thinkers in the entire world. I think he was ranked #4, and he's probably by far the youngest on at least the top 10 or 20 list, because most of us are old people. So he's one of the top business thinkers in the whole world. He's an expert on strategy. He's written some mega selling books. And he's got a new book coming out about building the Invincible Corporation. He's also a member of our wonderful 100 Coach organization. Let's get started. I'm going to ask you a different question. Real quick, 1-minute answer. You're a member of our lovely 100 Coach group. What's that like for you?
Oh, it's amazing. The amazing part is being together with so many people that I can learn from, that we can share. And, in particular, in difficult times like this, it's great to be part of a group like this, and where everybody encourages each other. And it changed my view on leadership as well, meeting so many amazing leaders. So I've had a lot of fun in this group of the MG 100.
Your upcoming book is about the Invincible Corporation. I love that title, the Invincible Corporation. And first question, might it sound just a little bit arrogant for a company to say, we're going to be the Invincible Corporation? What do you think?
Absolutely. And, fact is that no company is invincible. The only thing you can do is try to stay ahead by reinventing yourself all the time. And what you see time and time again, and I'm sure, you coach leaders of the top organizations, it's very hard to stay humble and to reinvent yourself when you're really successful. And for a very long time, I do believe it was possible to create a competitive advantage and stay ahead for a long time. But as our friend Rita McGrath writes from also the MG 100 and Columbia scholar, it's harder and harder to create a competitive advantage. Now you have a transient advantage. And what she means with that is you have to be able to invent new businesses, new business models, while you're killing the old ones. And that is incredibly hard. And I think very few companies today could qualify as those organizations that reinvent themselves all the time. So you can't become invincible, but you can try to stay ahead by remaining humble and reinventing yourself all the time, again and again and again. And most important, while you're successful.
One thing I love about what you just said is your very success can make it hard to change. Because your very success leads to this mentality of, I did this, we did this, we are successful, therefore this made us successful, which may be true in the past. As we've learned today, hardly a guarantee for the future. You've kind of inspired me. I think maybe I should write a book about this at the micro level, perhaps a title like, I don't know, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. That might be a good one.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're talking about the same thing. Absolutely. And there's an aspect to it that's absolutely true. You actually, you build a successful business model. Even the biggest corporations were a startup one day, right? You create your business model, become successful, then you branch out, have different business units. And what got you there, actually, you're going to focus on managing what you have. And now it's not enough anymore because business models are expiring like yogurts in the fridge, right? So you have to invent yourself because otherwise you're going to get disrupted. So clearly your message of what got you there, it's the same thing. And I think a lot of leaders are really struggling with this because, you've grown your business with a specific business model. When that crumbles, it's hard to imagine something else. And I think one of the big things that's happening as well is that today, many of the successful businesses are breaking out of industry boundaries, right? So the old thinking of, Porter's 5 forces, I'm in this industry or in that industry, doesn't really work anymore. Ask yourself, what industry is Apple in? You can't classify them anymore. Yes, they make hardware. Yes, they do software. Yes, they do entertainment. So the business model is starting to become the unit of analysis. And we would actually go further now with my co-author and myself. We'd say the business model portfolio that you build is going to keep you ahead. So constantly reinventing yourself and imagining a different future, that's incredibly hard. And you've written about this from the leadership perspective. It's incredibly, incredibly hard to admit that the future is going to look very different and you need to do something now to actually self-disrupt yourself.
I love this idea. I love your book. I love the concept of it. And one thing I think is true today more than ever. I have my ideas. I want to hear yours first. Oh, first, I forgot something. I've done about 7 or 8 of these, so you'd think by now I'd kind of figure out what I'm supposed to do, but not so much. I pretty much have to be told over and over again. One thing, we're all supposed to be encouraging questions. I would love to get questions from people. So on the chat box there, can you please write questions? Justin, you're the voice of God today, I think. Can you tell people how to submit questions?
Hello, everybody. This is Justin Levrier. Yeah, best way to do that is in the LinkedIn feed there to the side of your screen. Just type in your question below. We'll be monitoring those and surfacing as many as we can to Marshall and Alex.
Thank you. Now, Alex, I have an opinion on this. I'd like to get yours. I think basically the world needs this more today than ever. They need this more today than ever, this sense of innovation, reinvention. I have my ideas, but I'd like to hear yours first. Why do you think this is more important today than it's ever been?
The big thing here is uncertainty. And that's what we're living through right now. Very few companies are comfortable with uncertainty and exploring new ideas and acknowledging that you don't know what's going to work in the future. So dealing with that uncertainty is something that startups do really well because they don't have a business model yet. They have to iterate themselves towards something that's going to work. Corporations, by definition, they try to eliminate all the uncertainty. Very rigid processes so we can predict how much sales we're going to make. And all that is okay while your business model is stable. But the problem is you can't live for very long with a business model anymore. The shelf life of business models, they're expiring. And right now we have entire industries that are crumbling, right? News for a very long time, media for a very long time. Now we're seeing the same thing in the pharmaceutical industry and in the banking sector. So it's very hard for people who are accustomed to deal with managing certainty, predicting the future, delivering quarterly reports, to all of a sudden admit that, okay, we need to manage what we have, but we also need to create an entire new space where we behave a lot more like entrepreneurs. So the hard thing is actually creating those two cultures under the same roof. One where we explore and invent the future. It's a very different culture from executing and managing the existing. So it's not either or, it's and. And why is this more important today than ever before? Because the environment is just radically changing. And right now, we're living complete uncertainty. And you can already see that those organizations who were comfortable with exploring before the crisis happened, they're also more comfortable now with pivoting their business model and going into new directions. That's hard. And I'm not so sure that all of the companies, will survive this crisis, of course, but also in general, just be able to deal with this kind of new world where we need not just the managerial CEO, but we also need the entrepreneurial CEO. And that is a big shift in terms of leadership. And I'm not sure, how we're going to get there. We have our ideas, and I'm curious to hear about your ideas. How do we help companies actually get comfortable with uncertainty?
Well, the answer is, I don't know. I've got a couple of thoughts. One of them is, do you know Nicholas Taleb? He wrote The Black Swan, and really fascinating guy. I had the privilege of spending a couple of programs I did with him, and he is, by the way, as an investor, he's looked like an idiot up until the last month or two. The last month or two, I'm sure, I don't know this, but he's made so much money that the last 12 years, whatever he's lost has been recovered hundreds of times. So he has got to be just taking it straight to the bank right now. He also wrote a book about anti-fragile. And it really addresses what you're talking about, because what he said is, these black swan events will occur. And you can't just sit there and assume they're never going to happen, because they happen. In my book, Triggers, I talk about the high probability of low probability events. We never plan on low probability events. Well, if you look at the United States and the healthcare crisis, we've been bragging about no inventory, just-in-time delivery. We don't have some backlog of products. Well, we're bragging about it till we needed inventory. Now all of a sudden it doesn't seem so brilliant anymore. So really getting people in the organization not only to plan for the good times, which we all do, and we all make these assumptions of stability, and the curve goes like this, and therefore it's going to continue to go like this, as opposed to saying, the curve's going like this, it can also go like that. It can just disappear. So I think really fascinating, and also probably two kinds of people. If you look at Xerox, for example, or Kodak, look, I forget which one, I think it was Kodak invented the digital camera. So what? They weren't qualified to deal with it. And you can say, well, we'll train them to move into the new era. Maybe not. Maybe those old engineers that were brought up in a certain technology, training them to move in the new era is a very easy theory, but incredibly difficult in practice. So it's basically, I don't know, maybe creating multiple organizations within an organization. My friend Vijay Govindarajan talks about this, because the same people that are leading the stability, keeping the trains running, they're from Switzerland, is that correct? In Switzerland, do we like those trains to run on time? Yeah, you're good at it. The same person, though, that makes the trains run on time is probably not the breakthrough innovator in transportation.
Absolutely, and there are a couple of really important things that you hit on, and Vijay was a great inspiration to the work we're doing. We're not the first at all to talk about this, right? This is a topic that's been important for a very long time. Vijay Govindarajan, Rita McGrath, so a lot of inspiring thinkers. What we're trying to do with our work is almost take it a level down and provide the tools that help people actually implement this in organizations, right? So it's almost sometimes, with Rita, I call this in a funny way, the plumbers of business strategy. We try to make the tools and processes that help people actually get towards building that. And one thing is very clear is that everything is different in the uncertain space, right? So you need to have a completely different kind of culture. You need to have completely different metrics. You actually need to have a culture where you embrace failure. And people say, Alex, but don't say that. It's about learning. No, it's not about learning. It's about building a business. And it's a very low probability event. You mentioned that before, right? It's a very low probability event that you as a manager, you're going to pick the next $1 billion idea. And if you think you can, you're incredibly arrogant and delusional, because an entire industry, venture capital, can't do it. So what you need to put in place is a fertile ground for great ideas and great teams to emerge. So the decision maker actually doesn't make decisions in innovation. The decision maker creates the fertile ground for the best ideas to emerge, meaning that you will probably invest, the statistics from venture capital show, you need to invest in at least 250 projects, a little bit of money, so one winner will emerge. And after 3 months
Right.
or so, you actually killed 70% of the project. So you need to embrace failure, which is the contrary of what we do in execution, right? So that is incredibly hard to do, but we now kind of know how to do it because some companies are really doing this. Amazon has done this for a long time. My favorite case study is Ping An. They've been doing this for a long time. So we now know how to do it. Now it's a leadership question. When will leaders embrace this new opportunity and be ahead of everybody else in banking, in pharma, and start to, build those new types of organizations?
A couple of reflections. One is about failure. And I do think in the West, we've had it real good for a long time. In the United States, we've had our ups and downs, but since the end of World War II, we've gone on a very positive run. I mean, we did have the recessions and we have had some ups and downs, but on the whole, the trend line has been remarkably positive. And we've kind of developed this, well, we did it before, we'll do it again mindset. And you're in the same group with me with 100 coaches, kind of like if I think positive and have a good attitude, I will succeed. Well, I live in New York City. We talked about this. I love Ninth Avenue. They have a bunch of small restaurants and they have a restaurant row, which I love going to. They're all going to go broke. They're not kind of going to go broke or sort of going to go broke. They don't have a snowball's chance in hell. You can have all the positive thinking and great attitude in the world. It's not going to happen. They cannot live without tourists for 9 months, and no tourists are going to go to New York in the next 9 months. So unless I'm missing something, it's over. My last call, I was with Mo Casti. Mo was brought up in Lebanon. He's seen wars. He's watched people die. He's watched people win and lose fortunes overnight almost. For him, has a much different perspective on life. He's not hiding from failure. And I wouldn't even call it failure. He's not hiding from the end of your business. He said, look, it's the way it works. You learn, look, I've got myself, I've got my family, I've got my health, I got people I love. I can start over. Well, that's the attitude you pretty much have to have if you're really going to, quote, embrace failure. And one of the problems for most of us, we've never experienced failure. We've never seen people die. We've never been in a breadline. And so it's easy to talk about in theory. It is real tough to deal with in practice, especially when you're not used to it. Any reflections on that?
I think, that's hitting the nail on the head. It's something we're not used to. And, just like in life as individuals, we get comfortable with a certain environment, we get comfortable with a certain lifestyle. It's harder and harder to go back, right? And the same is for corporations. You get comfortable with being this large corporations, with being invincible, so you start to get arrogant. And you have to self-disrupt yourself, right? Whitney Johnson talks about this a lot. And it's the same thing for us as individuals or as organizations. So I think, we just need to understand what do we really need for ourselves as individuals in lives. And then everything else is not very tragic anymore because, I was working with a couple of people who've been in Afghanistan or so. And then when business people say, oh, I'm risking everything, they say, well, look, you're just talking about a business there. You haven't been in a war zone, right? So everything is relative. What we think are big decisions and so on. At the end of the day, it's just business, right? What really matters is what we do as individuals and how we respect each other at the end of the day.
Alex, if you don't mind, how old are you?
46.
You're a young guy.
46.
Now, you're a young guy. You've achieved amazing success at such a young age, and I'm sure you get your ass kissed constantly by a bunch of people who want to gain favor with you or some bullshit. And then you've had all kinds of people tell you how smart and wonderful you are, and you go to Thinkers 50, and everybody praises you as being a little god or something. And it's I'm old, so I didn't really get quite this much edge. Right now I live with this stuff. I've been the Hall of Fame winner of every college I ever attended and blah, blah, blah. It's very hard not to let this crap go to your head. Now, it's very hard for me, and I'm 71. Hell, you're 46. So how do you really focus on reinventing yourself in a world where everybody kisses your ass and tells you you're smart and wonderful and brilliant, to really say, wait a minute, let's deal with the real world here?
So that sounds like bigger and more achievements than the reality. But at the same time, I think you do have to just make sure you stay grounded, right? And at the end of the day, what's really important is how the group of people you have around you, how people respect each other. But I do try to do one thing, and that makes me uncomfortable every time. Getting out of my comfort zone, trying out new things, where I'm going to look stupid.
Yeah.
And I'm actually, I think the only reason I have some success is I have a relatively low barrier for failure and humiliation, and that actually gets me to move ahead. And if I'm looking at what we've achieved so far with the books and the company, I think we're just at the beginning. So, if you don't let it to get to your head, you're fine, right? So I think you just need to stay a little bit grounded. And there's so much, to solve in the world. What does the wallet and the ego mean when around us, the world is still crumbling? We have the environment to talk about, we still have poverty. So if you look at all of that, at the end of the day, what are the little achievements that we all have as individuals? They're nothing, because there's still a lot of problems to solve. You just got to look at that, and you stay pretty grounded, I think.
That's wonderful. All right, a voice of God, Justin, do you have a good question for our friend Alex?
Yes, Marshall. Let's see here. First question comes from Ashley Sylvester. She says, Alex, you said in a tweet that, quote, business plans are the enemy of innovation. And she says, we need to kill the business plans? What do you mean by that?
Oh, that's a big thing. Yeah. So the business plan is my personal enemy. And the reason is very simple, because there are a couple of myths, innovation myths there. First one is that if you just find the right idea, you're going to succeed. We need to put all our energy in the idea. And that's already fundamentally wrong, because the hard part about building a business is not the idea. It's turning the idea into a value proposition that customers care about and a business model that can scale. That's the hard part. And there's so much energy that goes into that. So what you want to do is, at the beginning, is not describe on 40 pages or 60 pages in a beautiful spreadsheet your wonderful fantasy, because just face it, if you're trying something new, you're going to be wrong. So what you want to do is roughly sketch out your idea and then admit you have no clue. And then test and adapt and test and adapt and test and adapt until you find what works. And that's the contrary of the business plan. Because in the business plan, you're refining, your idea, and you're saying it's just an execution problem. Innovation and entrepreneurship is not an execution problem, it's a search problem. So the business plan is not per se a bad thing, it's good for execution. I'm going to build a new factory, business plan is perfect. But I'm going to build a new business for a new customer segment that I don't know, with new channels, with new production lines. It's very arrogant to think you're going to figure it out, because you're going to waste a lot of time and energy and money. So that's why business plan competitions rarely produce actually real businesses. When you have business model competitions where people test their ideas all the time and you show the evidence that you're on the right path, you're going in a much better direction. So business plans should not be allowed in innovation and entrepreneurship, because they actually force you to refine a fantasy rather than to adapt your fantasy. My friend Steve Blank likes to say, there's a very fine line between vision and hallucination. So you better test and adapt so your vision doesn't turn out to be a hallucination when you lost, $2 million of investor money.
I love that. There's a very fine line between vision and hallucination. All right, Justin, voice of God, another question.
All right, Marshall and Alex, thank you for that. The next one comes from Kirk Baxter, and he addresses it to both of you. It says, Alex and Marshall, you mentioned earlier about behaving more like an entrepreneur. How do I behave more as an entrepreneur in my corporate environment?
Okay, Alex, you go first.
I'll give that one to Marshall. It's a hard one.
Okay, very good. I want you to send me an email, marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. I'm going to send you an article called Influencing Decision Makers. I'm going to be very quick, but I'll go over the gist of it. If you like the whole thing, just send me an email, marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. I'll send it to you. Influencing Decision Makers. In a corporation, you may or may not be able to do this effectively. Peter Drucker said, your mission is to make a positive difference, not to prove you're smart, not to prove you're right. If you're in a corporation that frankly doesn't give a shit about innovation and doesn't want to hear your ideas, how are you going to do it? You probably aren't. You have to really ask yourself, does anybody care in this corporation? Do they want me to do this? Do they really want to risk? Or as Alex said, are these just buzzwords that people are mouthing off, which is often the case. If they are willing to listen and be open-minded and hear what you have to say, then what happens is you realize the decision maker is the customer. I'm here to make a positive difference, not to prove I'm smart, not to prove I'm right. Their job isn't to buy. My job is to sell, and you learn how to sell. And you sell what you can sell, and you change what you can change. If you can't sell and you can't change it, take a deep breath and let it go. So send me an email. I'll send you an article about it. But that's just the gist. Alex, what are your thoughts? You've had some time to ponder this now.
I'll build on that, and I think absolutely spot on. I can only confirm that. I would add the Rita McGrath test, and for me, that's a very simple test. You need to look at the agenda of your leadership, of the CEO and maybe the leadership team, and look at how much time they actually spend on innovation and being entrepreneurial. And if the leadership team doesn't spend something like 40 to 60% of their time on innovation, so thinking about the future and not just thinking but also experimenting, you know what? There's no reason you should be entrepreneurial, because it's not going to help you nor the company, because this is not an entrepreneurial company. In that kind of company where the leadership does not take innovation seriously, you are committing your career suicide if you invest in being an entrepreneur or innovator. So you need to find a company where that is actually valued, and the Rita McGrath test of checking how much time leadership spends on innovation in their agenda every week or in the most important meetings, that will give you a very clear sign if this company will ever be able to innovate.
And I would add, by the way, don't fall for buzzwords. I mean, everything Alex has just said, we recognize failure, we love innovation, blah, blah, blah. That's all talk. When somebody fails, do they get crucified? If the answer is yes, it probably isn't a very good idea unless you want to get crucified as well. Okay, we got time for one final question. Let's hear it from Justin.
Can I add one
Marshall
thing to
and
what you
Alex.
said? Because
of course.
Just one thing. So if you take Jeff Bezos, there's a lot Jeff Bezos could probably do better. But one thing that is not a buzzword at Amazon is they say, so Jeff Bezos says to his investors and to the public, Amazon is the best place in the world to fail. So in the case of Amazon, it's not innovation theater, but they take it seriously. So really be careful if a company is doing innovation theater just for the show, or if they're doing it strategically. Right. Very few companies actually do it strategically.
I love that term, innovation theater. I'm going to have to remember that one. And the first time I say it, I may give you credit, but after 4 or 5 times, I'm sure it was my idea. So anyway, anyway, one final question.
Okay, our final question today comes from Kathy in Australia. She says, how are you spending your time during this crisis or black swan event? And how has your thinking shifted?
Go ahead, Alex.
So, for me, there are a couple of things. Number one, I have a company. So, in our organization, for me, the team is number one, right? So we want to get through this without having to let go. And we're in a luxurious, position that we're probably going to be able to do that. So protecting the culture and the team first is very important. And we can do that because we actually did, a plan for maybe not this kind of atomic bomb event, but for this kind of event. So for us, the team is very important. Then number two, on the professional side, definitely trying to help all of the organizations and colleagues around me take the MG 100, helping out wherever I can, and that's on the professional side. And then obviously, just taking care of the people around me is a crucial aspect. Is that family? Is that friends? Some people are losing their livelihood. So how can I help? Maybe not with money, because I can't help everybody with money, but I can help with giving them visibility through the traffic I can create as a thought leader. So just asking myself, where can I be helpful? And I think that's an important part for all of us. And it's not just about giving or giving money. It's just figuring out, how can you help others? What do they really need right now in this particular difficult situation?
Okay, now finally, I'd like to wrap up and say thank you so much to Alex. I'm very honored to know you. Very proud that you're one of my honorary sons of our 100 Coach Project. So very, very proud. I'm a very proud honorary father here. And so we're gonna stick around, hang on the call after we hang up. We'll just do a quick debrief. For everyone else, just again, let me just say thank you for listening. Alex is trying to do his little bit. I'm trying to do my little bit here. Help us all get through this and kind of the best way we all can. And I always say this, I'm a Buddhist. Buddha said, only do what I teach if it works for you. I give you ideas. Alex give you ideas. Hey, we're good-hearted people just trying to help a little bit here. Some of this stuff works for you, do it. If it doesn't work for you, smile, take a deep breath, and just let it go. It's okay. It's okay. And hopefully we can all pitch in and help each other. Final comment, just my honor to talk to all of you. I feel very honored. So many thousands of people listen to these calls. Stay safe. Take care of the people you love. Same time, same station tomorrow. Talk to you later. Thank you so much.